The council chamber stretched wide and tall, filled with beings from across the galaxy. Captain Doyen Park stood at the center platform, his hands clasped behind his back. The blue light from above made his uniform look darker than it really was. He had practiced his speech for weeks, but now the words felt heavy in his mouth. Around him sat the Galactic Coalition Council. Insectoid Vethrax clicked their mandibles softly. Crystalline luminars hummed with internal light. Gaseous Nethrix floated in their containment spheres. Dozens of species, all older than humanity, all watching him with what he could only describe as bored patience. "Honorable council members," Doyen began, his voice steady, despite the tension in his chest. "The United Earth Space Command requests permission to establish a research outpost in Sector 794 of the frontier regions. This area contains 3 uninhabited systems with significant mineral deposits and potential for agricultural development. We have submitted full environmental impact studies and security protocols." Chancellor Thexnell, the lead Vethrak representative, raised one of his forearms. The gesture was dismissive. Doyen had seen it 18 times before. Captain Park, the Chancellor's translator device, made his chittering sound like words. "Your species has made this request many times. The answer remains unchanged. The frontier sectors are not appropriate for human expansion at this time." Hyejin Choi stepped forward from behind Doyen. She was Earth's chief diplomat, a woman who had spent 15 years navigating coalition politics. Her face remained calm, but Doyen could see the small muscle jumping in her jaw. "Chancellor, with respect, we have asked for smaller permissions, survey rights, scientific missions, trading posts. Each time we are told to wait. Yet the Koran were granted mining rights in Sector 812 last month. The Nelthar received approval for colonization in the Outer Rim just 3 weeks ago. Both requests were processed in under 10 days. The crystalline being called Corvinthal pulsed with red light. When luminars showed red, it meant annoyance. The situations are not comparable, Ambassador Choi. The Koran and Nelthar have proven themselves stable members of the coalition for thousands of years. Humanity joined only 73 years ago. 73 years of perfect compliance, Hyejin said. Her voice grew stronger. We have followed every rule, paid every fee, attended every committee meeting. We have contributed our technology, our resources, our best people to coalition projects. What more do you need from us? Time, Corvinthal replied simply. The word hung in the air like a stone. Doyen felt something crack inside his chest. Time. Always time. They had been patient. They had waited. They had asked nicely, filled out the forms, gone through proper channels. And for what? To be patted on the head and told to wait longer? How much time? Doyen asked. The question came out harder than he intended. Chancellor Thexneel's eyes focused on him. All 4 of them. Captain Park, your species is young, impulsive, your history is full of conflict. Your planets were at war with each other barely 2 centuries ago. The coalition must be certain that humanity can be trusted with expansion beyond your home system. We haven't had a major conflict in over 100 years, Doyen said. 100 years is nothing, another council member said. This one was a Dravix, reptilian and cold. My people have been at peace for 50,000 years. That is stability. The meeting continued for another hour. Hyejin presented data, charts, testimonials from species that humanity had helped. She spoke of the medical advances humans had shared freely, the engineering solutions they had provided during the Epsilon Station crisis, the food supplies sent to colonies hit by crop failures. The council listened politely. Then they voted. 18 votes to deny, 3 abstentions, 0 approvals. Doyen and Hyejin walked back to their ship in silence. The station's corridors were busy with aliens going about their business. Some nodded to the humans as they passed. Others ignored them completely. 19 times, Hyejin finally said. 19 times we've asked for something, anything. They'll never say yes, Doyen replied quietly. We could wait 1,000 years and they'd still find a reason. Back aboard the UES Resilience, Doyen found a message waiting in his private quarters. It was encrypted with Earth command codes. When he opened it, Admiral Taewon Shin's face appeared on the screen. The Admiral looked tired. His hair had more gray than the last time they had spoken, but his eyes were sharp and focused. Captain Park, the message began. By now you've received the Council's answer. I want you to know that Earth Command expected this outcome. We've been tracking the pattern for years. Every species that joins the coalition faces the same treatment. The old powers keep the new ones in check. They call it maintaining stability. I call it maintaining control. The Admiral leaned closer to the camera. There's going to be a meeting when you return to Earth, a big one. Fleet commanders, science directors, political leaders. We're going to discuss options. Real options. Not just filing another request form and hoping for better results. Something in the Admiral's voice made Doyon sit up straighter. I need officers I can trust, Shin continued. People who understand what we're facing. You've been patient, Doyon. You've played by their rules. But I think you're starting to see what I've known for a long time. The game is rigged, and we need to decide if we're going to keep playing it. The message ended. Doyon sat in the darkness of his quarters for a long time. Outside his window, the coalition station glittered with lights. Thousands of ships came and went, carrying species from all over the galaxy, trading, exploring, living their lives, everyone except humanity, who had to ask permission for everything. Doyon thought about the frontier sectors. Empty systems with nobody living there, worlds waiting to be settled, resources that could help billions of people, all sitting unused because some ancient species had decided that humans were too young, too new, too different. He thought about the Corran getting approval in 10 days. The Nelthar getting their colony rights approved faster than humanity could get a simple survey permit. And he thought about Admiral Shin's words. The game is rigged. For the first time in his career, Captain Doyon Park wondered what would happen if humanity simply stopped playing. 3 months passed since the Council's rejection. In that time, something changed on Earth. Not suddenly, but like water slowly coming to boil. Admiral Taewon Shin stood in the command center beneath Seoul. Around him, holographic displays showed 50 ships preparing for launch. Not military vessels, though they could defend themselves if needed. These were colony ships, each carrying 5,000 people and everything needed to start new worlds. All ships report ready, said the communications officer. Her name was Yuna Song, young but steady under pressure. Dr. Kwan's status on the jump drives? Shin asked. Mireille Kwan looked up from her console. She was the one who made this possible. For 5 years she had worked in secret, modifying human faster-than-light technology. The Coalition shared their jump gate network, but they controlled it completely. Every ship that used it needed permission. Every destination was logged and tracked. Mireille had found a way around that. All drives are functioning perfectly, Admiral, she said with a small smile. We don't need their gates anymore, Shin nodded. He looked at the display showing Earth's political leaders watching from their offices around the world. The president of the United Earth government gave him a slight nod. This was it. The moment they had been planning since that last council rejection. Operation Sovereign Step. Send the message to all ships, Shin ordered. Begin launch sequence. One by one, the 50 colony ships lifted from Earth. They didn't head toward Coalition space. They didn't request permission to use the jump gates. They simply pointed toward the frontier sectors and activated their modified drives. Space folded around them, and they were gone. On Station Apex, alarms began to sound immediately. Coalition sensors detected the unauthorized jumps. Within an hour, Chancellor Thexnil was demanding an emergency council session. The humans have launched ships without permission, he declared, his forearms waving in agitation. They are violating every treaty, every agreement. This is unacceptable. The council chamber erupted in chittering humming and various forms of alien outrage. Messages flooded Earth's diplomatic channels. The Coalition demanded the ships return immediately. They threatened sanctions. They spoke of humanity's reckless behavior and disregard for galactic law. Earth's response was simple and direct. It came from Ambassador Hyejin Choi, who stood before the council once more. We are colonizing empty systems, she said calmly. No other species lives there. No one has claimed them. We asked permission 19 times to do this legally. You denied us every time. So we stopped asking. You cannot simply take what you want. Corvinthal's crystal form blazed red. There are procedures, processes. You must wait for approval. We waited for 73 years, Hyejin replied. We followed every procedure. We completed every process. And you kept saying no. So tell me, Counselor, how long should we wait? Another 73 years? 1,000 years? Forever? The Council voted for immediate economic sanctions against Earth. No trade through Coalition channels. No access to certain technologies. No participation in joint scientific programs. Earth accepted the sanctions without protest. Back in Seoul, engineer Jiwoo Han was working on something that would make those sanctions meaningless. He was 28 years old and had spent the last year building humanity's first independent jump gate, not a small one for ships. A massive one that could transport cargo, resources, and people across vast distances without touching coalition infrastructure. Power levels at 90%, Jiwoo reported to his team. His hands moved across the controls with practiced precision, beginning final calibration sequence. The structure stretched out before him, a ring of metal and energy 2 kilometers across. It floated in space near Earth's moon, held in position by gravity anchors. Dozens of engineers had worked on it, but Jiwoo had designed the core systems. Coordinates locked on New Hyundai, someone called out. That was the name of humanity's first successful frontier colony. Captain Seojin Lee had taken his ship there 3 weeks ago and sent back images of blue oceans and green land. A world waiting to be home. Activating gate, Jiwoo said. The ring hummed. Energy crackled along its circumference. Space inside the ring began to shimmer and twist. And then suddenly there it was. A window across light years. Through the gate they could see New Hyundai's star hanging in dark space. It works, someone whispered. Then louder with joy, it works. Jiwoo allowed himself a smile. They had done it. Humanity now had its own network. The coalition could close their gates to human ships all they wanted. It didn't matter anymore. The first cargo ships began moving through the gate within hours. Supplies for the colonies. Equipment for building. Seeds for planting. Everything needed to thrive in new worlds. Captain Seojin Lee sent a message back from New Hyundai. His voice was excited, filled with wonder. You should see this place, Earth. It's beautiful. We've already started construction on the main settlement. The soil is good. The water is clean. This is going to work. More colony ships launched over the following weeks. 50 became 70, then 90, each one heading to empty systems that the coalition refused to let humanity use. The sanctions continued. Coalition member species stopped trading with Earth officially. But interesting things began happening. Independent traders not bound by council laws started showing up in Earth orbit. Small merchant ships from dozens of species offering goods and services. Some came because they saw profit. Others came because they were curious about the species that defied the ancient powers. A few came because they had their own frustrations with coalition control. Admiral Shin watched it all from his command center. The expanding colonies, the new jump gates being built, the unexpected allies appearing from nowhere. They thought cutting us off would bring us to heel, he said to Mirai one evening as they reviewed progress reports. They were wrong. They underestimated human stubbornness, Mirai replied with a tired smile. She had barely slept in weeks overseeing the jump gate construction program. Not just stubbornness, Shin said. Determination. We've spent too long asking permission to exist, to grow, to be something more than what others allow us to be. On Station Apex, emergency council sessions continued daily. The Vethraks demanded military action. The Luminars called for stronger sanctions. The Draviks suggested blockading Earth's system, but nothing happened. Because beneath the outrage and demands there was uncertainty. Humanity hadn't attacked anyone, hadn't taken anything that belonged to another species. They had simply gone where no one else was and built homes. What law had actually been broken? The council searched through thousands of years of regulations and found the answer uncomfortable. There was no law against settling empty systems, only traditions. Only the understanding that younger species waited for permission from older ones. Humanity had broken no law. They had only broken an unspoken rule. The rule that said some species got to decide what other species could do, and once that rule was broken, it could never be put back together. In orbit around Earth, the second jump gate neared completion. Jiwoo Han worked 18-hour days, driven by the knowledge that each gate made humanity stronger, more independent, more free. How many more can we build? Admiral Shin asked him during an inspection visit. Jiwoo thought for a moment. As many as we need, sir. The design is proven now. We can replicate it anywhere. Shin looked out at the gate, at the stars beyond, at the future humanity was building without anyone's permission. Then let's build 100, he said. The coalition armada appeared at the edge of human-controlled space without warning. 30 warships led by Commander Scarthun of the Dravix Imperial Fleet. Their vessels were old but powerful, built by a species that had conquered worlds before humans learned to make fire. They moved toward New Hyundai with clear intent. Captain Yunbi Nam received the alert while having breakfast in her quarters aboard the UES Unyielding. She dropped her coffee and ran to the bridge, still fastening her uniform jacket. "Tactical display," she ordered as she reached her command chair. The screen showed the Coalition fleet approaching, 30 ships to her 5, the Unyielding and 4 other Earth vessels that were providing colony security. "They're not answering hails," her communications officer reported. "Wait, incoming transmission now." Scarthun's face appeared on screen. His reptilian features showed no emotion. Cold eyes, scaled skin, mouth full of sharp teeth. "Human vessels, you are ordered to evacuate the New Hyundai system immediately. This is an illegal settlement. You have 12 hours to comply." Yunbi felt her heart pounding. 12 hours to abandon a colony with 2,000 people on the surface. Buildings half-built. Farms just planted. Lives just beginning. "Commander Scarthun," she said, keeping her voice level. "New Hyundai was uninhabited when we arrived. We have violated no territorial claims. We have the right to be here." "You do not have coalition approval," Scarthun replied. "That is the only right that matters. 12 hours, Captain. Then we will remove you by force." The transmission ended. Yunbi looked at her crew. Young faces, experienced hands all looking to her for direction. She thought about backing down, about the lives at risk, about the easy path of compliance. Then she thought about the 19 rejections. The 73 years of asking nicely. The pattern that would never end if someone didn't stand firm. "Open a channel," she said. "All frequencies. Maximum broadcast. Channel open, Captain." Yunbi stood. She looked directly into the camera, knowing her words would reach not just the Coalition fleet, but stations and ships across this entire sector of space. "This is Captain Yunbi Nam of the United Earthship Unyielding. To Commander Scarthun and the Coalition fleet, we will not be leaving. New Hyundai is home to 2,000 human colonists. They came here legally to an empty world that belonged to no one. They have built farms and houses and lives. We asked your permission to do this 73 times. You said no every time, so we stopped asking." She took a breath, feeling the weight of what came next. These worlds were empty. We harmed no one. We took nothing from anyone. But you come here with warships to force us out, to make us ask permission again, to keep us small and controlled forever. We are done with that. We will defend this colony. We will defend our right to exist and grow like every other species in this galaxy. If you want us gone, you will have to remove us, and the blood will be on your hands, not ours." The transmission ended. Silence filled the bridge. "That's going to spread everywhere," her tactical officer said quietly. "Good," Yunbi replied. "Let it." On the colony surface, Administrator Hyunwoo Baek gathered the colonists in the main assembly hall. He was a practical man, good at organizing people and resources, less good at inspiring speeches. But he tried. "Some of you may have heard about the Coalition fleet," he said to the worried faces before him. "Captain Nam is handling the situation in orbit. Down here we continue our work. We keep building. We don't stop living just because someone threatens us." A woman raised her hand. "Are we going to fight them?" "We're going to stand our ground," Hyunwoo said. "There's a difference. We're not attacking anyone. We're just refusing to leave our homes." Work continued on the colony, but the atmosphere had changed. People kept looking up at the sky, wondering what was happening above them. In orbit, the standoff began. The Coalition fleet took up positions around the planet. The 5 human ships positioned themselves in a defensive formation. Neither side moved closer. Either side fired. Hours became days. 3 days became 9. During that time, something unexpected happened. Yumbi's broadcast had spread across the galactic network. Millions of beings watched the human captain's speech. They saw the Coalition fleet surrounding a peaceful colony. They began to ask questions. Support came from surprising places. The Quellan, an independent species that had never joined the Coalition, sent a message to Hyunwoo on the colony surface. They wanted to establish trade relations. They offered food supplies, medical equipment, and construction materials. Hyunwoo met with their representative, a being that looked like a cross between a bear and an octopus. His name was too complex for human mouths, so he said they could call him Ven. "Why help us?" Hyunwoo asked directly. Ven's tentacles rippled with what might have been laughter. Because the coalition has controlled too much for too long. They decide who trades with who. They set the prices. They make the rules. You humans are showing that there's another way. We like that. Within 2 days, they had signed a trade agreement, the first treaty between humanity and another species that didn't go through coalition approval channels. Back in orbit, Commander Scarthun was receiving increasingly uncomfortable orders from the Council. Fire on the humans. Remove them by force. Show them the price of defiance. But Scarthun hesitated. His sensors showed that the human ships were indeed defensive. They hadn't targeted his fleet. They weren't threatening anyone. They were just there, existing, refusing to leave. If he fired first, he would be the aggressor. The galaxy was watching now. Yunbi's broadcast had made sure of that. On the 9th day, Yuna Song, who had been monitoring all communications, noticed something important. Captain Nam, you should see this. There's traffic lighting up across multiple coalition channels. Other species are asking questions. The Corran submitted a request for autonomous expansion rights. The Nelthar are demanding a review of approval processes. There's even chatter from some Vethrak colonies about the Council being too controlling. Yunbi smiled. We're not alone. No, Captain. You started something. On Station Apex, Chancellor Thexanil faced an emergency council session that had turned into chaos. Representatives were arguing. Some demanded immediate military action against humanity. Others questioned why they were threatening force against a peaceful colony. A few openly wondered if the approval process needed reform. Order. Thexanil's translator device amplified his chittering to a shout. We must present a unified response. The humans have violated protocol. Which protocol? Asked a Corran representative. Show me the law they broke. Silence. Because there wasn't one. Only tradition. Only the old way of doing things. Back at New Hyundai, day 10 of the standoff began like the previous 9. But something felt different. The coalition fleet was communicating more with Station Apex. Their ships had moved slightly farther back from the planet. Then suddenly, they began jumping away. One ship, then another, then all of them. Commander Scarthun's final transmission was brief. Captain Nam, the coalition fleet is withdrawing. This matter will be addressed through diplomatic channels. His voice carried something that might have been respect, or maybe just relief that he didn't have to fire on a peaceful colony while the galaxy watched. When the last coalition ship vanished, the bridge of the unyielding erupted in cheers. People hugged each other. Some cried. Umbi just sat in her chair, feeling the weight of the last 9 days finally lift. On the colony surface, Hyunwoo received the news and immediately announced it over the loudspeakers. The colonists celebrated in the streets. They had stood firm and won. But the real victory wasn't just keeping their colony. It was showing the galaxy that the old rules could be challenged. That saying no to unjust authority was possible. That species didn't have to ask permission to exist and grow and thrive. Yunbi's message had reached across the stars, and it had changed something fundamental in how the galaxy worked. The standoff at New Hyundai changed everything. Within weeks, the Corran made their move. They were a mammalian species covered in soft gray fur with large eyes and careful hands. For 200 years, they had been model coalition members. Following rules. Asking permission. Getting denied. Over and over, just like humanity. When news of humanity's successful defiance reached their homeworld, something awakened in them. A delegation of Corran officials announced they would be establishing colonies in the unclaimed Varos cluster. Without permission. Without approval. Without asking, the coalition condemned it immediately. Chancellor Thexanil gave speeches about order and respect for authority, but his words felt hollow now. The galaxy had watched coalition warships back down from peaceful human colonists. Why should the Corran fear threats that proved to be empty? The Nelthar followed next. They were aquatic beings who lived in pressure suits when outside their water worlds. They had specific needs, specific requirements for worlds they could settle. For centuries, the coalition had told them to wait. The right planets would be approved eventually. Just be patient. The Nelthar stopped being patient. They announced expansion into 3 water-rich systems. They would terraform them if needed. They would build homes for their billions of citizens who lived in overcrowded water cities. More species began questioning the coalition's authority. Small acts of defiance at first. Unauthorized trade agreements. Scientific missions launched without approval. But each act eroded the coalition's control a little more. On Earth, in a research facility near the ruins of what was once called the Demilitarized Zone. Dr. Siwan Kang was making a discovery that would shake the galaxy even more than military standoffs or colonial expansion. Siwan was an archaeologist and xenohistorian. She studied ancient civilizations and pre-spaceflight cultures. Her current project involved analyzing data from the frontier sectors, specifically from ruins on a planet near New Hyundai. The ruins were old, really old, older than the Coalition itself. "Run the dating analysis again," Siwan said to her assistant. "These numbers don't make sense." Her assistant, a young man named Taman, checked the results 3 times. "Dr. Kang, the analysis is consistent. These structures are at least 5,000 years old, maybe older. But the Coalition is only 3,000 years old," Siwan said quietly, "and they claim the frontier sectors were always empty. Unclaimed. That's why they said humans couldn't settle there, remember? These areas were being reserved for future development by senior member species." She looked at the images from the ruins again. Architecture, writing systems, technology remnants, evidence of a sophisticated civilization that had existed exactly where the Coalition said no one had ever been. "Who were they?" Taman asked. "That's what we need to find out," Siwan replied. "And more importantly, what happened to them?" She requested more data from other frontier regions. What came back shocked her. More ruins. Dozens of sites scattered across the sectors the Coalition had kept empty for thousands of years, all showing evidence of civilizations that had existed before the Coalition formed. Siwan compiled her findings into a report and sent it to Earth Command. Admiral Shin read it and immediately understood the implications. "They didn't keep those sectors empty for future development," he said during a meeting with Earth's leadership. "They kept them empty to hide evidence." Back on Earth, historian Bomin Yoon had been digging through different archives. Not ancient ruins, but Coalition records. Public documents, treaty texts, meeting minutes from thousands of years ago. The kind of boring, bureaucratic material that most people ignored. What he found formed a pattern. "Look at this," Bowman said to his research team, projecting documents onto the wall. 3,000 years ago, when the Coalition formed, there were over 50 spacefaring species in this region of the galaxy. Today, there are only 23 senior members and a handful of junior members like humanity. So some species went extinct? Someone suggested. Maybe, Bowman said. But here's what's interesting. Every few centuries, the Coalition records mention species that were integrated, or transitioned, or merged into existing member states. But there are no details. No explanation of what those terms actually mean. He pulled up more documents, population records, resource distribution data, territory maps from different eras. The pattern became clearer with each piece of evidence. The senior species didn't just build the Coalition, Bowman said quietly. They maintained it by preventing anyone else from growing strong enough to challenge them. They restricted expansion. They controlled resources. They kept newer species dependent and limited. A woman on his team spoke up. "What happened to the species that didn't comply?" "That," Bowman said, "is what I'm trying to figure out." Journalist Jiano received both Siwan's archaeological report and Bowman's historical analysis. She was an independent reporter, not bound by Earth's official channels or Coalition media regulations. She ran her own network that broadcast across multiple systems. Jian read through the materials 3 times. Then she began making calls, reaching out to sources, verifying data, building a story that would change everything. Her broadcast went live on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. It reached millions of beings within hours, billions within days. "The Coalition has told us they maintain order." Jian spoke directly to the camera, her voice clear and strong. "They claim they protect younger species, guide our development, ensure galactic peace. But evidence suggests something different. The frontier sectors, which they kept off limits for thousands of years, show ruins of civilizations that existed before the Coalition formed. Multiple civilizations, all mysteriously gone." She displayed images from Siwan's research, ancient cities, advanced technology, species that no longer existed. Historical records show a pattern of species disappearing from Coalition rosters. Integrated, they called it, transitioned, merged. But what really happened? Where did these species go? And why are the sectors where they once lived now empty and forbidden? The broadcast continued, laying out evidence, asking uncomfortable questions, connecting pieces that the Coalition had worked hard to keep separated. The Coalition didn't want humanity expanding into the frontier sectors, Gion concluded. Not because we were too young or too aggressive, but because we might find evidence of what they did to species that refused to stay limited and controlled. The ruins are still there. The truth is still there. And now the galaxy knows to look for it. The response was immediate and explosive. Coalition channels went into crisis mode. Chancellor Thexneil held emergency press conferences, dismissing the reports as speculation and conspiracy theories. But the more he denied, the more people questioned. Independent researchers from multiple species began examining the data. They found more ruins, more evidence, more questions that the Coalition couldn't answer satisfactorily. On Station Apex, the council chamber descended into chaos. Representatives argued openly now. The Corran delegation demanded explanations about ruins found in their territory. The Nelthar wanted access to sealed historical archives. Even some of the senior member species began questioning decisions made thousands of years ago by their ancestors. "This is destroying us," Corvanthal said to Chancellor Thexneil in a private meeting. The Luminar's crystalline form pulsed with distressed colors. "The junior members don't trust us. Some of our own senior members are questioning the founding principles. We did what was necessary for order," Thexneil insisted. "The galaxy was chaos before the Coalition. We brought structure. We brought control," Corvanthal corrected. "And now that control is breaking." News came of the Corran establishing their 5th unauthorized colony. The Nelthar had successfully terraformed their first water world. 3 other species had announced independence from Coalition trade restrictions, and humanity kept expanding. New colonies, new jump gates, new trade agreements with independent species like the Quellan. Earth's economy was growing despite sanctions. Their technology was advancing without Coalition oversight. They were thriving in defiance. The old order was crumbling. Not from war, not from conquest, but from the simple act of species refusing to accept artificial limits anymore, refusing to ask permission to grow and exist and build futures for their people. Dr. Siwan Kang stood in the ruins on the frontier world, running her hands over ancient stone. Whoever had built this place, they had been real. They had lived and worked and dreamed, and somehow they had disappeared, their worlds kept empty and forbidden for thousands of years. "We won't disappear," she said quietly to the ruins. "Not anymore. The humans, the Corran, the Nelthar, all of us. We're going to exist too loudly to be erased." Above her, human ships moved through space without asking anyone's permission, and across the galaxy, the old Coalition watched their control slip away, one defiant act at a time. 10 years later, Admiral Doyen Park stood on the observation deck of New Sol Station and watched ships arrive from across the galaxy. The station floated in orbit around New Sol, humanity's largest and most successful frontier colony. What had started as a small outpost was now a city of 3 million, with towers reaching toward the sky and farms stretching across 3 continents. The ships approaching carried representatives from 40 different species. Some were old Coalition members. Some were newly independent. All were coming for the same reason, to found something new together. Doyen was older now, with gray touching his temples and lines around his eyes. But he stood straight and strong, ready for this moment. He had gone from captain to admiral, from requesting permission to hosting the galaxy's future. "They're arriving on schedule," Hyojin Choi said, walking up beside him. She carried a datapad with the day's agenda. She was still Earth's chief diplomat, but her job had changed dramatically. Instead of begging for scraps from the council, she now negotiated as an equal with species across the stars. "How many confirmed attendees?" Doyen asked. 40 species officially. Another dozen sent observers. Even some Coalition members came unofficially. Hyojin smiled. "The old Chancellor isn't among them, though." Doyen had heard about Thexneil. The Vethrak had been removed from his position 3 years ago, when it became clear the Coalition's authority had fractured beyond repair. He now lived quietly on his homeworld, no longer shaping galactic politics. The conference hall was enormous, built specifically for this gathering. Unlike the old council chamber with its tiers showing hierarchy, this room had a circular table. Every seat was equal. Every voice would have the same weight. The species arrived throughout the day. Corran delegates with their soft gray fur and careful movements. Nelthar in their pressure suits representing their 3 new water worlds. The Quellan led by Ven himself, tentacles moving with excitement. Dozens more, each with their own story of breaking free from coalition control. When everyone had assembled, Doyen stood to open the conference. The room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," he began simply. 10 years ago, humanity made a choice. We stopped asking permission to exist, to grow, to build homes for our people. Many of you made similar choices. Some earlier, some later, but all of us arrived at the same conclusion. The old way wasn't working. He looked around the room, meeting eyes and optical sensors and whatever various species used to see. The coalition was founded 3,000 years ago to bring order to chaos. That's what they told us. But we've learned the truth now. It was founded to maintain control, to keep power in the hands of a few old species while everyone else waited forever for approval that would never really come. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. "We're here today to build something better," Doyen continued. "Not to replace one hierarchy with another, not to make the same mistakes with new faces, but to create a true partnership. The Free Reaches Coalition." Hijin took over, projecting the charter they had spent months developing. "The principles are simple. Any species can join as an equal member. Expansion into unclaimed space requires only that you don't harm others or take what belongs to them. Technology and knowledge are shared freely, not hoarded. Decisions are made by consensus, not by the oldest or strongest imposing their will." The Koran representative spoke up. Her name was Aram. "And if we disagree? If consensus can't be reached?" "Then we agree to disagree," Hijin said. "The Free Reaches isn't about forcing unity. It's about providing a framework for cooperation. If members want to pursue different paths, they can, as long as they respect others doing the same." The discussions continued for 3 days. Details were debated. Concerns were addressed. Languages were translated through dozens of variations until every species understood exactly what was being proposed. On the 3rd day, they voted. 40 species approved the charter. The Free Reaches Coalition was born. Back on Earth, Mireille Kwan watched the proceedings through a live feed while working in her lab. She was older now too, but still driven by the same passion for discovery. She had just finished the prototype for a new jump gate design that was faster and more efficient than anything humans or coalition species had built before. "Dr. Kwan, the energy readings are excellent," Ji Wuhan said. He had become her lead engineer, still young but brilliant. Together they had revolutionized human space travel. "Good," Mireille said. "Send the specifications to all Free Reaches members. Open source, no restrictions." Ji Wu hesitated. "Doctor, we could patent this. The licensing fees alone would be enormous." "Money isn't the point," Mireille replied. "When we were restricted and limited, we dreamed of being free to share and grow. Now we are. Let's not become what we fought against." Across the galaxy, the old coalition still existed, but it was a shadow of its former self, limited to its founding members and a few species too cautious to embrace change. Their territory had shrunk. Their influence had faded. They still held council sessions, still passed resolutions, still claimed authority, but no one was listening anymore. On Station Apex, the council chamber felt empty even with all the representatives present. Chancellor Corventhal, who had replaced Thexnel, addressed the gathering with a tone of resignation. "The Free Reaches Conference has concluded successfully. 40 species have joined their coalition. The Luminar's crystal form showed subdued blue. We must accept that the galaxy has changed. Our authority is no longer recognized by the majority." "We should have reformed," a Dravix representative said bitterly. "When the humans first defied us, we should have listened instead of threatening." "We thought we could maintain control through force and fear," another added. "We were wrong." In a quiet dwelling on the Vethrak homeworld, former Chancellor Thexnil watched the news broadcasts about the Free Reaches founding. His forearms hung loosely by his sides. He had lived a long life dedicated to maintaining the Coalition's order. Now in his final years, he was watching that order dissolve. An invitation arrived through his communication system from Admiral Doyen Park, inviting him to attend the Free Reaches Conference as an observer, not to participate, not to vote, but simply to witness what was being built. Thexnil didn't attend. He couldn't bring himself to watch in person, but he did send a message back, brief and simple. "I see now what we should have been. Thank you for showing us." Back on New Sol, the conference concluded with a celebration. Species that had once competed under coalition restrictions now shared food and stories. The Nelthar offered water dance performances. The Koran demonstrated their traditional crafts. Humans provided music that made some delegates uncomfortable, but others found fascinating. Captain Unbi Nam, whose standoff at New Hyundai had helped trigger this transformation, stood with Commander Scarthun of all people. The Draviks, who had led the coalition fleet against her colony, had quietly left coalition service 2 years ago. He now worked as an independent security consultant, helping new colonies establish defensive systems. "I am glad I did not fire on your colony," Scarthun said, his reptilian voice carrying something like regret. "It would have been wrong. I knew it then, but I almost did it anyway because orders are orders." "But you didn't," Yunbi said simply. "You made a choice. That's what this is all about, making choices instead of just following orders." On the final evening, Doyen gave a closing speech to the assembled delegates. His words were carried across the galaxy through countless networks and channels. 10 years ago, humanity stopped asking permission, he said. "We were scared. We didn't know if it would work. We thought we might face war or destruction. But we decided that living small forever was worse than the risk of standing tall." He paused, looking at the faces before him, representing so many different species and worlds. "We didn't destroy the old order with weapons or conquest. We simply stopped accepting that others had the right to limit us. And in doing that, we inspired others to stand tall too. The Koran, the Nelthar, all of you, this is your achievement as much as humanity's." Another pause. "The free reaches isn't perfect. We'll make mistakes. We'll have disagreements. But we'll face them as equals, not as masters and servants. We'll build our futures together, not by asking permission but by respecting each other's right to exist and thrive." The applause that followed came in dozens of forms. Clapping, chittering, humming, tentacle slapping, and sounds that had no human equivalent. All of it meaning the same thing: agreement, hope, celebration. Young Captain Danby Lim watched from the back of the hall. She was 26 years old and commanded one of humanity's newest exploration vessels. She had been born after humanity's defiance, grown up in a galaxy where humans didn't ask permission. This new normal was all she knew. "It's strange to think it was ever different," she said to her first officer. "The older generation remembers," he replied. "They carry that memory so we don't have to, so we can just live free without thinking about it." Danby smiled. "Then we better make sure we're worth the fight they put up." As the conference ended, and delegates began returning to their worlds, something fundamental had shifted in the galaxy, not through war or revolution in the violent sense, but through something more powerful: the collective decision to stop accepting limits imposed by others. The old coalition members could keep their hierarchy if they wanted, but the rest of the galaxy would be building something else. Something based on mutual respect and earned trust rather than enforced compliance. Doyen stood on New Sol Station one last time before departing for Earth. He looked out at the stars, at the ships coming and going freely, at the future humanity and its new allies were building together. Someone had once asked him what military force it took to break the coalition's control. His answer was simple: none. They just stopped playing a rigged game. And once they stopped, others stopped too, and the game collapsed under its own weight. The day humanity stopped seeking permission was the day the galaxy began to grow up. Not everyone was ready for that change, but enough were, and that made all the difference.